What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we are going to be going over 7 different books that I should have DNF'd. Now, what I mean by this is that sometimes as a Christian, I'll be reading secular work within the science fiction and fantasy realm most of the time. I'll be reading it and I will get so wrapped up in the story or so pulled into the setting that I love the characters in the story so much that there are times where I will overlook certain things that I probably shouldn't.
What?
And on top of that, for the past several years, I have been a completionist for the most part when it comes to the books that I read. And what I mean is I look for reasons not to DNF a book. Despite all of these DNF videos, I actually want to enjoy the books that I read, and I actively want to finish the books that I start because it seems like such a huge waste of time when I do have to DNF a book. So there are a myriad of reasons why I might DNF a book, and we're going to go over 7 of those books today. And some of them could be for no reason at all, and some of them could be for a very good reason. So book number 1 that I should have DNF'd but didn't is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Now, I know that for some people, they're going to say, well, this isn't actually canon, or this isn't actually in the series or included in the series, but it really is. This is one of those books where I struggled all the way through it. It had so many problems, and I didn't put it down simply because it was in the Harry Potter universe, and I was looking forward to diving back into it. Unfortunately, this book did not work for me at all. It fell completely flat, and there were just so many issues with it. If you haven't read the Harry Potter books, there's going to be light spoilers here, but there were issues within that series that I had, but I could overlook some of those. And one of the main ones was the time turner. And I think J.K. Rowling knew that she was writing herself into a corner with the time turner by the end of the book, because by the end of the book, it was destroyed. And the reason why I say she was writing herself into a corner is because with time travel, it can get very hairy, no pun intended, if you are trying to continue a series where there's going to be conflict and those types of things. It's going to be very difficult for somebody to not argue the point, why don't we just go back in time and change that thing? And so I think to avoid writing herself into a corner, she had written that it was destroyed at the end of book 3. But then we find out in The Cursed Child, no, there are more, and this is what could happen. And it just really didn't work for me. I did not like the characters at all. I didn't like the plot at all. I didn't like the fact that it was written in the form of a screenplay. I understand that it was a screenplay, but they definitely could have transformed that into a novelization. There were just so many issues with it that I had, and nothing about it worked for me. So I should have put it down very quickly. I didn't. I pushed through, and to my great regret, I did finish that book. So that's book number 1. Book number 2 on this list is going to be Dawn of the Jedi. Now, this is one of the Star Wars Legends novels. I picked this book up because when you look in the beginning of the Star Wars books, and the Legends books at least, they have a chronological reading order. And this was book number 1. And so when I decided I want to get into the Star Wars universe several years ago, I thought, why not start with book 1? Why not start with the first book that tells you about how the Jedi were formed, or how the Jedi learned how to use the Force or build lightsabers? That sounded really interesting. This is not that book at all. This book is terrible. If you're looking for Jedi, if you're looking for people learning how to use the Force, if you're looking for the development of lightsabers, if you're looking for the beginning of the Jedi Code, this is not in there. To me, this book was so forgettable that I should have put it down so many times, but I kept thinking it's going to get better, it's going to get better, and then it never did. And so I should have put this one down a long time ago and just powered through and finished it, and really regret the time that I spent with it. The next book on this list is going to be The Last Wish, which is chronologically, the first Witcher novel that we read. This is a collection of short stories by, I'm going to try to pronounce his name, but it's probably wrong, but it's like Andrzej Sapkowski, something like that. I should have put this book down for numerous reasons. One of which is I didn't really care for it. There were some stories in here that were really cool, and they were the stories where he was actively hunting monsters. Those stories were fantastic. Everything else fell pretty flat. Everything else felt very bland, and it was telling a story that I didn't really care about. I wanted to read about this monster hunter in a fantasy world. I didn't really care about Siri and all of those other things. Aside from that, this book gets pretty explicit. So I should have put this book down when I got to that point at least, and I just didn't. I definitely should have listened to my conscience here, and I do know that if I were to pick the book up now, I would definitely put it down a lot sooner than I did then. So I cannot recommend this book. And unfortunately, I did finish it. I do not recommend this book for Christians. And it's so unfortunate because I love the character of The Witcher. I love the world that is built, but this is not a series for me. On top of that, this book series was translated to English, and I think the translation does not work. I think you lose a lot of not just the descriptors, but it just kind of seems like the life got sucked out of it. So for so many reasons, I should not have finished this book, but unfortunately I did. The next book on this list is going to be, I believe it's The Map of Days, but it's the last book of the Miss Peregrine's Peculiar Children series. This is the last book in the second trilogy. Now, I will do a dedicated review for the first 3 books in the future. I actually highly recommend those books, and they were some of the books that got me back into reading, but the series should have ended there. Unfortunately, the second trilogy really didn't need to take place at all. There was no sense in any of the events taking place. I was very satisfied with the ending that we get in book 3. But on top of that, at the end of the last book, we are introduced to a homosexual character. Now, this is a character that has been in all of the series, but it is never explicitly stated that he has same-sex attractions whatsoever, nor should it be, because these are children we're talking about. And so when this was just kind of thrown in there, literally last minute, is the last few pages of the book, it just tarnished the entire series for me. I probably shouldn't have even pushed through the second series, but I did love these characters and I did love the world. And so I continued on. But unfortunately, we did get introduced to those characters, and so I cannot recommend it. And on top of that, I regret reading the second trilogy. All right, book number 5 on this list is going to be Artemis by Andy Weir. Now, if you've watched any of my shorts, you know how I feel about this book. I don't really know that I'm going to do a dedicated review for this. I don't necessarily know if it's needed, but you know, if that's what you guys want, let me know down in the comment section below, and I might do a dedicated review for this book. But it pained me so much to read this book because I love Andy Weir's other books. I love The Martian. It's one of my favorite sci-fi books of all time. Might be my all-time favorite. I really enjoyed Project Hail Mary. It seemed like this book was a way for Andy Weir to cash a check.
Hello, I like money.
There's really no other way for me to explain that. There wasn't really a story to be told here. We're following a female protagonist. It was basically Mark Watney in The Martian if it was a woman. And then on top of that, Andy Weir began to lean more into the explicit content into his books rather than lean away from. Now, with The Martian and somewhat even in Project Hail Mary, there is some heavy language, and this one really kind of kicks that door down. It's very explicit as far as its language goes. But on top of that, it definitely dives into the more sexually explicit scenes. But this book was just not good. It seemed like it was just a way for Andy not only to cash that check, but to stroke his ego and to let people know how much science and applicable physical science he can include into his books. So unfortunately, I cannot recommend this book to anyone moving forward. I wouldn't anyway. The story just isn't very good. But on top of that, I can't condone the explicit nature of the book either. And honestly, if you've read the book, you probably know if you don't read it, you're not really missing out on anything. So this leads me into book number 6, and this is going to be a series. This is going to be Mistborn Era 2. Now, for those of you who have clicked on any of my videos, you probably know my feelings about Brandon Sanderson at this point. Aside from that, Mistborn Era 2, the first book started out fine. It was a solid read. It was fun, but it was pretty forgettable. Book 2 was far better, and in my opinion, I know A lot of people say it's the weakest of the four, but Shadows of Self to me was the best book in Era 2. The ending of that book was so fantastic. The rest of the book was fine, but the ending of that book made it all worth it. And it was is really tightened up. However, in book 3, we are introduced to a lesbian character. It didn't really affect the plot that much, but it did tug at my conscience enough to where I probably should have put it down then. However, at the time, I was such a big Sanderson fan, I thought, well, maybe this is just one of those passing or glancing references to a particular character. It's not really going to be fleshed out at all, and just kind of moved past it. It did bother me. I want to make sure I clarify this. It absolutely bothered me. I pressed on regardless against my better judgment. And then in the last book, it definitely is fleshed out quite a bit. I had to skip, I think, 2 whole chapters of the book. And if I'm having to skip chapters of your book, I probably don't need to continue to read it. So I should have put down Era 2 when this first came up. Unfortunately, I didn't. And it's to my great shame that I did not. It was also the book that kind of where you could see Sanderson's leanings towards certain agendas. So I definitely should have put it down, and I didn't. And now I've wasted all that time and effort. So this leads me to book number 7 on this list. And this one really hurts, but it is going to be Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I absolutely love this book. I want to make this very clear to anybody watching. It's not like I read these books because I want to put them down or I want to hate them. I don't. I love picking up a good book and finishing it and being pulled into that world. I love those books. I have numerous books on these shelves that I love being able to escape into or dive into these new worlds with these familiar characters. I absolutely love that. So don't think that I actively look to DNF or actively look to criticize in a negative way these books. I want to like the books that I read. And the reason why this one pains me so much is because I do love this book. It was one of the books that got me back into reading a few years ago. It is a book of nostalgia for people that grew up in the 80s and 90s. It is an amazing, amazing book of nostalgia. And it has a fantastic story behind it. And it has a phenomenal end. And it's a standalone. It's so fast paced. But at the beginning of the book, I believe there's about an entire page where it is just straight blasphemy. And rather than allude to our characters' religious leanings, Ernest Cline decides to use it as an atheistic platform to proselytize for atheism. I really struggled with that. Now, the first time I read it, I didn't even really notice it. I just kind of skipped over it. But keep in mind, this was me as a Christian 7 or 8 years ago. Then near the end of the book, we're introduced to a lesbian character, a character that we have been invested into. And then all of a sudden, there's this plot twist. Oh, this is actually a girl. And not only is it a girl, the reason why she's involved in this world is because society cast her out because she is attracted to another girl. And honestly, her character's backstory didn't even matter. The fact that she was a girl was actually a pretty cool twist. But then again, Ernest Cline used that twist as an opportunity or a platform to project his political and social justice leanings. I think it was like 2 or 3 pages of just monologue where she's just talking to the character about, well, this is why I've been so oppressed and I had judgmental parents that were, these really religious nuts, and it was nonsensical. And then by the end of it, has nothing to do with the story, doesn't drive the plot forward whatsoever. It's just in there because Ernest Cline decided I need to check this box, or I need to make sure that I'm promoting this thing in this book. And so at the time, I could skip it. As a matter of fact, I still have my copy where I have actually taken a permanent marker and blacked out those lines in the book. What I should have done was thrown it in the trash. What I should have done was put it down. What I did instead was I actually bought copies for other people. And again, to my great shame, I can't take that back. I can't take those recommendations back. As a matter of fact, I recommended this to somebody at work. I bought them a copy and because they had similar interests, and I'm like, you would love this book. And he finished it pretty quickly. And then he got to the end of it and I'm like, what did you think? And he said, I'm really surprised that you like this. And I said, why? And he goes, well, because it has this really blasphemous stuff in it, and then it's got this same-sex stuff in it. I'm really surprised that you would recommend this. I mean, he said, I enjoyed most of it, but I didn't really enjoy that part. But I'm really surprised that you would recommend that to anybody. And so I went back and read it again. And this was probably 4 or 5 years ago. I went back and read it again, and it definitely bothered me more, to the extent of I know that if I were to pick it up again, that I would have to DNF it almost immediately. So not only am I embarrassed and ashamed that I recommended this book to somebody, but that I continued to promote it and purchase it and support the author when these types of things are steeped into the work, let alone promote it to people who are Christian. Again, I'm not making this video to try to bash anybody other than me. I'm not making this video to do anything other than to say I have made some big mistakes in my reading journey, and I don't want you to make those same ones. So I'm trying to caution you with the things that we ingest, that we set our minds to, because I don't want you to have to go through the same type of experiences I have and do, which is that I am not just embarrassed, but ashamed that I would promote and support these titles as a Christian. Now, just as a disclaimer, that does not mean that if you love these books that you are not a Christian or whatever. This is just my personal experience. These are just my opinions about these books at this time, at the time of recording now, because again, I am sure there are books that are on my shelves right now that I'm going to have to get rid of in a couple of years. And I certainly hope that's the case, because that means that I'm maturing in my faith and that I'm becoming more offended by sin and not less. With that being said, moving forward, I am definitely going to try to approach my reading with humility, with the understanding that my view is flawed and inherently sinful, and has been my presupposition for a very long time, and that I still have some of those bad habits that I'm actively working to be rid of. So I need to approach these things with humility, and am being fully dependent on the Lord and his wisdom and not my own when it comes to all things. So not just where I attend service or what movies and TV shows I watch, but the books that I read and the way that I speak to my family and the way that I speak to my friends and my coworkers. I need to be fully dependent on him and his wisdom and not my own. So I hope that this video has helped you. I hope that you can look at your shelves and be proud of what's on there and not go, yeah, maybe I shouldn't support that. Yeah, maybe I need to get rid of that book. Maybe I need to send that one to the thrift store or whatever. But maybe this has helped you. Maybe you haven't read some of these books and you've kind of been on the fence about the content, and maybe you realize like, hey, I'm going to steer clear of that one for a little while. So guys, it is my hope that these videos can be used as a tool for you to where we can make sure that we are spending our time, energy, and money more wisely on things that do not directly dishonor the Lord. So I hope I've been a help to you in some way. Leave a comment down in the comment section below if I have. I love talking to you guys down there. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.